There has been a huge content and information drop about the upcoming Value of Memory DLC of Assassin's Creed Mirage, and in this video we're going to discuss all of them, including a lot of details that you might have missed, ranging from the story context of the DLC and its implications, the setting and locations, the new gameplay elements that are going to be added, including a new faction and a lot of new activities, and also a number of improvements that have been added to the main game as well, including replayability for the main black box missions and contracts, and a lot of Parkour Additions as well. So let's not wait any longer, we got a lot to cover, and let's dive into all the news and missable details about the Value of Memory DLC of Assassin's Creed Mirage. So yes, finally, in the last few days, as a celebration for the second anniversary from the release of Assassin's Creed Mirage, we have gotten a major look at the new and upcoming expansion of the game, which is now confirmed to be called Value of Memory. Developed by Ubisoft Bordeaux and Ubisoft Paris, it's going to release on November the 18th, 2025 for free for the owners of the game, and will bring around 6 hours of new content between its main story and side activities. The DLC will bring a new story chapter set in a new map, which is going to be centered around the valley of AlUla, an ancient Arabian oasis city and current governorate located in the Medina province in Saudi Arabia. And as you might know, the DLC being set in Saudi Arabia stems from the partnership that was revealed at the beginning of this year between Ubisoft and Savvy Games Group, a company owned by the Saudi Arabian government, while production of the DLC actually started around the end of summer 2024, as reported by Numerama. As far as we currently know, this new story will be part of Basim's coming-of-age narrative arc, meaning it will still be part of the arc that is told in Mirage, and more specifically, it will take place right before the final events of the main game, meaning this is before Basim goes in the Isu temple underneath Alamut and accepts his past as the Isu Loki, changing his life forever. In the DLC, the story will dive deeper into Basim's connection with his long-lost father Ishaq, a narrative arc that supposedly was meant to be in the original game along with Roshan's arc and Ali bin Muhammad's arc, but was later cut. According to the devs, it's going to be a story about reconciliation, acceptance, and closure, which seem to hint at Basim actually finding his father at some point, which is also kind of confirmed by creative director Olivier Leonardi in the promotional material. As a refresher, Basim's mother died when he was very young, so he was raised only by his father Ishaq, who was the architect of the Great Mosque of Samarra, and according to Basim, he was a public servant who dedicated his life to the betterment of his people, but also, at least according to an old and Loki-inspired Basim, Ishaq had no love in himself for his son. Ishaq was violent, and in doing this, he passed on this approach onto Basim, although I'm not so sure that this last part is going to be picked up by the DLC. Nevertheless, in Basim's words, another man who played the Caliphate game better took the credit for the creation and construction of the Great Mosque of Samarra, which caused Basim's father to be exiled and die in poverty. That man historically was the Caliph Al-Mutawakkil, who Basim eventually accidentally killed, but that didn't bring his father back anyway, and I would imagine that could be one of the sparks that pushes Basim to look into his past. And apparently, in an article by Numerama, it is stated that in the DLC, Basim will be tracing his father, who was banished by the Caliph, so it seems we are towards the latter part of Ishaq's life, and I wonder if Basim is going to actually find him, and then, whatever happens, things don't change and Ishaq will still die in poverty, or if the DLC is going to actually retcon what was established in Valhalla and change Ishaq's narrative. As a memento from his father, Basim always has with him a brooch that he created out of a blue ceramic tile from the house that he lived in with his father, as a way to always remember him and his origins, and indeed the promotional material for Value of Memory does show him looking at his brooch and possibly thinking of his father. But most importantly, in this scene we also see him looking at a drawing where we can see the Great Mosque of Samarra in the background, and in the foreground a house with blue tiles in the shape of Basim's brooch. That's definitely the house that he lived in with his father in Samarra, and in front of the house a man giving a kid a horse toy, and these people are definitely Ishaq and Basim, which makes it an even stronger memento for Basim about his earlier life with his dad. Creative director Olivier Leonardi stated that the DLC is called Valley of Memory because Basim is going to explore this new setting in search for answers about his past, which are supposedly going to be connected to his father, but I wouldn't be surprised if he also found answers about his other past, that is, that of the Isu Loki. Mirage's creative director Stéphane Boudon also states that this story will provide a deeper understanding of the choice that will ultimately define Basim, that is, that of accepting the essence and memories of Loki inside of him and continuing on following his other life and purpose. So it's going to be interesting to see if or what he's going to find out about the Isu portion of his essence, even though, like we said, this happens before the final events of the main game, meaning Basim will still not know who the genie and Nihal represent, that is, his ties with Loki's essence and story, but conversely, this means that the genie and especially Nihal might also appear in the DLC. Also, speaking of characters that make Basim who he is before he radically changes his life forever, Enkidu, his eagle, will also make a comeback. We see him both in the teaser trailer and in the dev diary as a hint that this is taking place before the ending of Mirage. Just look at how Basim smiles at him, so different from when he has to accept that Enkidu doesn't recognize him anymore. And speaking of old friends that are part of Basim's early life, in this sequence we see Basim ride away from Baghdad in his new black outfit along with his friend Derwish from the main game, a character who ran a network of thieves and had connections with the Hidden Ones, and it seems like Derwish is going to be a relevant character in the DLC as he is prominently featured in the key art in the reveal trailer and in the cutscenes, so I'd imagine he could be our support and contracts dealer in AlUla. So from everything we've gleaned, we do know that Basim is going to travel to AlUla in search of information about his father, and I wonder why he would. What is connected to his father that he doesn't know about already? Anyway, he's going to have his friend Derwish at his side, but he's also going to interact with a number of very ancient landmarks like the Jamal Ikmah site that in this concept art is featuring a rock in the shape of an eagle with the Hidden One's insignia underneath it, or like the tombs in the Hegra necropolis, which might also be built on some Isu ancient sites. Just look at how much he's looking at it, almost as if he was drawn to it, right? So we can definitely expect a lot out of this DLC, possibly some more Hidden Ones and Isu lore, and thankfully we won't have to wait very long. Like we said, the whole DLC is going to be set in the Valley of AlUla, a region so very dense with archaeological sites and tombs dating back to more than 2000 years ago, well-preserved ancient stone inscriptions, some beautiful rock formations and volcanic and desert terrains, and of course the AlUla oasis itself, which make for a very interesting area to explore and put the spotlight on. AlUla was also the crossroads for many trade, communication, religious and military routes, and a bustling hub for many civilizations, which is going to be reflected in Valley of Memory in the various areas of the map. According to Numerama, the map of the DLC will rival the size of the city of Baghdad and its outskirts, and will be organized in 5 districts, that is the old town of AlUla, the oasis, and 3 major landmarks/sites. According to art director Florian Salomé, each region of the new map will have its own flavor, with an urban area in the south of the map dedicated to the old town of AlUla, and a desert area all around with rock formations in the north. So based on what we can see and what we glean from all the material that has been released, including the information shared by Saudi Arabia's VP of Culture Abdul Rahman Al-Suhaibani and Dr. Rebecca Foot, there are a number of confirmed locations that we're going to be visiting within AlUla. First we have the old town of AlUla, which is going to be the urban area in the map. is going to be a dense town with busy streets, its own mosque, and the traditional spice markets, and it will be overlooked by the Musa ibn Nusayr fort, which actually existed at the time. These concepts are also named North District and South District, meaning that the town itself should be big enough to have multiple sub-districts. Very close to the AlUla old town lies the oasis, which of course actually exists and has supported the region's ecosystem and economy for centuries, and in the game it is going to be a lush area full of canals which were used to develop agriculture in the region. Outside of the oasis, there's going to be a big desert area which is going to be comprising of rocky formations in the north within an area defined by the devs as Land of the Dead, and these rocky formations will also be climbable and will provide some parkour opportunities for the player. The rocky formations will also include the Jabal al-Fil or Elephant Rock, which is a huge rock in the shape of an elephant that actually exists and will indeed appear in the DLC. In between this desert and rocky area, players will be able to find some incredibly ancient landmarks such as the necropolis of Hegra, Saudi Arabia's first UNESCO World Heritage Site that was populated since before the first millennium BCE and that bears more than 100 tombs and chambers such as the Qasr al-Farid. Next we have the so-called lion tombs, which are rock-cut burial niches decorated with reliefs of lions, hence the name, dating back to the 500 or 600 BCE during the Dedan kingdom. Another interesting location that we see in the dev diary and that will appear in the DLC is Jabal Ikma, which is a location nestled in a remote canyon that acted as a crossroads for travelers as far back as the first millennium BCE that is famous for hundreds of detailed inscriptions etched into the cliff faces and rocks. This is the location that supposedly is shown in this concept, and it's also where we're likely going to see this eagle-shaped rock, with the location supposedly bearing some importance for the assassins or hidden ones at the time, and honestly, this couldn't be a more perfect location to have some more and new Isu language, but I'm not sure I should hold my breath for that. Overall, as mentioned by creative director Olivier Leonardi, right from the start of Mirage's development, the devs had a number of locations in mind for Basim's journey that didn't make the cut in the game, and here we see some notes and sketches about locations and ideas that are actually connected to Valley of Memory, as we see the note Dedan's Lion, with Dedan being one of the most popular sites of the AlUla area. It was the capital city of the Dedan kingdom, and like we said, one of the most significant sites of Dedan are the so-called lion tombs. So what we're seeing here in the dev diary are likely sketches from a mission called Dedan's Lion that might indeed take place in this area, where Basim might disguise as a merchant, marchand in French, and these sketches might indeed represent what the author envisioned for this mission. So that's what we know about the setting, but there's a lot more coming with Valley of Memory, including some new additions to the DLC specifically, and some other improvements that are going to work both in the DLC and in the main game. As for what concerns Valley of Memory, the devs mentioned that their attempt is to improve on all the main pillars of Mirage's main game, providing more opportunities for what concerns stealth, parkour, and assassinations. And as for the stealth and assassinations, we do have some glimpses here and there. For example, here we can see Basim walking away from a target that he has assassinated, and here we can see an air assassination with a chain poison knife throw, just like in Shadows. By the way, it goes without saying, but pickpocketing will be back, as we can see some highlighted pouches in the footage. The devs also mentioned that there would be more stealth and especially parkour opportunities both in the old town of AlUla and in the rock formations and in the desert area, which parkour players will be able to climb and run around. By the way, more on parkour later. There's also going to be a new faction of enemies called the Robbers, wearing purple outfits, who are attracted to the region by the wealth brought by the traders, and thus we're going to find them both in AlUla's old town but also outside of it, with the devs actually stating that the further you stray from the oasis, the greater the risk of getting ambushed. And indeed the game will actually have an ambush mechanic, and interestingly enough, players might also be ambushed by animals within the rocky formations and desert areas of the map. It's also mentioned that this parkour gang has a leader called Abyss that we see both in concept and in a screenshot, so I guess we're going to pursue and assassinate him too. The devs also mentioned more side activities coming with the DLC, including new contracts, new world events, a new side activity called Folk Tales, which will be focused on the local culture and will seemingly feature Basim telling stories to NPCs while playing the oud, which is a lute-type string instrument that is typical to the Middle East and was developed during the Islamic Golden Age. There's also going to be another activity called Stolen Goods, which relates to the robbers factions, and there are also going to be new parkour challenges that include chasing flying documents much like in Assassin's Creed 3 and Black Flag that I suppose, based on this icon, might actually get Basim to learn new tunes and stories to play with his oud in the folk tales. Another side activity is going to be collecting the information for a dedicated codex with 21 new entries dedicated to the AlUla Valley and area, and also the folk tales being recorded in here. Also, looking at this menu page, we can see the notifications on the inventory, investigation, skills and codex pages, which contain new outfits, new weapons and trinkets and new skills coming to the game. And as for the outfits, we can definitely see at least a new one through all the promotional material. Of course, the DLC will bring new quests that are going to be tracked on the investigation board, including some black box missions, plural right there, and through the promotional material we have already seen some of the standard missions. One might be called Lion of Dedan, like we said, and another one we see is called Into the Wilds, which requires Basim to perform some kind of research through various camps in the area. And speaking of camps, it does seem like the map is going to have a number of them that we can either visit or clear if they are enemy camps, both in the urban area and in the desert area, including the so-called Caravan Driver camp, which is where you're going to land when you fast travel from the main Baghdad map. And through this screen we can see another activity that might supposedly end up in the DLC that is called Stealth Races, which is going to be interesting, at least based on its internal name. But that's not all, because in addition to the new map, setting and story, the DLC will also bring a number of updates that will apply both to the main game and also the DLC map. For example, the main black box missions and the contracts from the main game, and supposedly those from the DLC, will finally be replayable as soon as you complete them for the first time, and this is going to be presented as Animus sequences, which are basically challenges with specific constraints to make the missions fresh, which also include time constraints, and replaying them will bring new rewards for the players, such as new weapons, a new outfit, and even the so-called Animus mods, which are going to be mods that bend the rules of gameplay. Then the devs announced several additions for parkour, stating that they will bring pole vaults and corner swings to the DLC areas, but they're also going to add some improved parkour mechanics, such as the free jump, which will allow us to jump freely without the constraints of the level design, and will allow us to also improve the parkour flow by gaining verticality and also jump over smaller objects. And also the free back ejects and side ejects, that is, being able to perform side or back ejects at any height without having any hanging points around you, as a way to spring you to the ground or lower levels acrobatically. Both new features can be toggled on and off from the menu and will apply to both the main game and the DLC. And the devs have also announced the introduction of control scheme presets that you can also toggle from the menu to fit your playstyle, but you can also customize them the way you like. There are also going to be upgrades on the tools and skills that can be used both in the DLC and the main game, with a new skill allowing players to equip all the tier 1 tool upgrades for each tool at the same time, and also each tool will have a new level 3 tier, which is going to provide players with even more effects that they can play with to customize their stealth sessions, like the Sleepmaker effect that causes enemies to fall unconscious on impact. The devs also added 2 new difficulty settings, making it a total of 5, one of which is the Ultimate Assassin extremely tough difficulty, but they will also allow players to customize their difficulty settings based on several different aspects organized in the combat, stealth, and navigation categories to make it more suitable to their liking. And lastly, there will also be more visual filters like the Assassin's Creed 1 filter that was originally added to Mirage, such as an Assassin's Creed Origins 1 and an Assassin's Creed Odyssey 1. In general, the devs are saying that the DLC is another way to celebrate the fans and the franchise like Mirage was, but they're also calling this a final bow to the fans, which does seem to close the door on any other potential future DLCs, but I guess we're gonna have to see if the Saudi Arabian government agrees on that. So it's a matter of weeks really, and we're definitely going to try and cover more news on the Value of Memory DLC of Assassin's Creed Mirage as we go on, but if you can't wait for that and you'd like to get prepared for the DLC, you can check our videos dedicated to Basim's story before and after Mirage, which contain the information on his father, or you can check our story analysis on the ending of the game, which you can find in the description of this video. Thanks for watching, a huge thanks to our ATA insiders and initiates for their amazing support, and I'll see you all in our next video.